Hello and welcome to part 6 of this chess rating run on chess.com, where I started my rating as low as it would go on chess.com, which I think was 400, and then I'm trying to work my way up to see how high I can go. This is the 6th part in this series, and normally I do the games live, but I had problems with the recording, so I'm going to go back over the games and let's see how it went. So the first game I played was against a 1062, and let's see here. It looks like the opponent had internet problems, so this game was real quick and short. So I had, oh here, let me flip the board to my side. I had black in this, so he opened up with e4, and I decided to play the Caro-Kann to play it safe and see what he would do. And then he played knight to f3, and many times in the Caro-Kann they'll control the center with both pawns and then you push forward with d5. But he played a little differently here with knight to f3, and so I attacked his pawn in the center and he pushed forward, and I just moved my bishop out of the pawn chain here because I wanted to push forward to e6 and not block my bishop in. But here he had internet connection issues, and I ended up winning the game. I guess he couldn't log back in, and so anyway, yeah, I got an easy win on that one because of their internet issues. So let's go on to the next game, and let's see here. I'm trying to get into my archive, so give me a second here. I'll go to a new analysis, load from the archive. Okay, so the second game, let me check here. All right, so now we're on to the second game, and in this game, let me flip the board here. I had the white pieces, and so I started with d4 to control the center, play a little safer and more positional instead of attacking with e4 where the games tend to be more tactical. So they played a little differently from what I'm used to. They played knight to c6 attacking this pawn, and so I wasn't sure whether to push forward and attack their knight and make it waste time, which maybe that would be better. But I was a little unfamiliar with this opening, and so I decided to just continue trying to set up a Kali formation type of opening. But they played a little differently, and so they attacked immediately here. And I didn't want to bring my bishop up to d3 right away because I was worried about it being chased by this knight. But I first attacked his bishop to force him to make a decision to capture or retreat. So he retreated to keep the pin on this knight. And so instead of moving to d3 later, I decided to just immediately move to e2 to break the pin and to be able to castle more quickly. So he captured, I captured, and immediately he attacks here in the center and threatens to push further and chase my bishop. So I immediately capture in the center, and after his recapture, I didn't want him to capture my bishop, and I wanted to keep the bishop pair. So I thought about retreating, but then I saw that this pawn was open and that I could capture this pawn for free. So he chases me away. I go over here to keep my bishop, and I thought maybe he would trade queens, but that would be to my advantage since he's already a pawn behind. So he does not trade. He just puts me in check. And here I blocked with the knight because I didn't want to lose the bishop pair by having him trade off. But after I reviewed the game, it looks like it would have been better if I just blocked with the bishop and attacked him. But I didn't do that, and so maybe I should have, because now I run into a little cramped position and this knight is pinned, but I go ahead and castle to get out of that pin on my king, of the bishop, sorry, the knight to my king, and then he starts attacking on my king side. So I move my queen, so there's not a potential queen trade here. And he further attacks on the king side, trying to storm through my position. And so I go up here to attack his unprotected knight and force him to do something. And I could get this pawn. So he protects, and I decide, instead of capturing a pawn, to go ahead and trade off this knight, because I'm ahead by one pawn. And when you're ahead in material, it's better to trade off pieces and have an advantage at the end. So now he captures, and then here I decide to try and open up the position a little bit, since his king is still stuck in the middle. And now his bishop is pinned to his king and under attack by this pawn. But he puts me in check. And so here I decide to move out of the check, and now his knight jumps into the position, threatening to fork my king and queen. So here I let the game get a little crazier than I wanted tactically. So now I move myself into position where his bishop is lined up on me, but he retreats back, keeping this bishop lined up on my king. If he couldn't capture the bishop, or I would just capture here. And so I attack his queen to keep some kind of pressure on him, and he can't move in to fork my pieces. My king could capture him, but he's also pinned here. And so finally he takes the pawn, I recapture with the rook, and then he moves here, I guess, to free up this knight, but already he's losing, because now I just captured the knight, his queen is pinned to his king, and so he trades, but now his king is in check, so he retreats. And I've developed this bishop out so my other rook can get into the game. And here he blocks the bishop's attack on this pawn. So I move out, putting pressure with the bishop and the rook on this f7 pawn. He attacks here, but this is losing because now I have a mate in 2. So I capture, putting him in check. He must retreat because the rook's protected by this bishop on b3. And after his retreat, my other rook swoops in for a checkmate. So that was an interesting little tactical fight earlier in the game, but I just came out ahead on that one. And so let's move on to the next game and see how that one went. Let me get out of this and give me 1 second. Load from the archive. Alright, so the final game. This next game, it went a little bit longer and went into the end game, and it was a little tougher, but I ended up coming out on top in this one. So let me flip the board. So I had black in this position, and white begins with e4, and e4 is a great first move if you like tactical and attacking games, as it immediately lets your bishop out, your queen out, and usually with e4 the pawns are more likely to be traded in the center of the board than if you move d4, where with d4 pawn openings usually the position is more blocked and restricted. The pawns don't usually trade as much, and there's more maneuvering, and it's more positional play. And so here I decide again on the Caro-Kann. and they move their bishop immediately, lining up here, but I'm able to push my pawn forward, so when they capture and I capture, now their bishop has to waste time retreating. And so I just develop, they develop their knight, I bring out another knight, trying to get all my pieces out as fast as I can. So now they're attacking here with these two pieces, and here I didn't want to push forward and attack his knight because I felt that possibly he could move forward and have both his knights attacking, and I don't know, maybe that was a better move to push forward like that. But I ended up playing e6, which maybe I had a better move in this position because this blocks in my bishop. It does help fortify this d5 pawn, but maybe this wasn't the best move here. And so they castle. I move my bishop to e7 so that I can castle. And so they move their pawn up, taking control of the center, and possibly bringing this knight up in the future to take control of this hole in my position. And so I castle, and they move the rook, taking control of this open or half open e-file. And so here I decide to try and go after the bishop pair by attacking his bishop, and he moves his knight down here to my side of the board, which I thought, well, I'll chase this knight away because it's not doing anything at the moment, but I didn't want any surprises later. Like in the future, he could have had an attack on this, but right now my bishop is covering that. If there was a rook sacrifice, pawn captures, a knight forks the rook and the queen, but this bishop is covering that. So I just decided to chase the knight away. The knight retreats to h3, which I guess so he can swing back to f4 later. And so I go after the bishop pair by taking his light squared bishop. He recaptures my knight, and then I develop my bishop, trying to get my pieces off the back rank. And his queen moves here to eye this position, potentially moving to g3, lining up on my king, and then this bishop could capture the h6 pawn, and this pawn would be pinned to my king if his queen is here. So I thought, well, I'll move my queen here, so if his queen moves to g3, I can exchange off and break his pawns up a little bit, or at least double two of his pawns. So that happened. He moved to g3 with his queen. I capture, and he captures and doubles his pawns up here. And normally you want to capture towards the center, but possibly he didn't do that because this pawn is moved forward, and I don't know, if this was open, he wouldn't have much. His rooks would be stopped by this pawn being on h6 instead of h7. But anyway, after that, I developed this bishop to a little better diagonal where it can cover these squares up towards the king side as well as head off in this direction. So he pushes this pawn, and here I just made a little mistake because I had a plan on what I wanted to do with my pieces, and I should have stopped for a second to look that this pawn was unprotected, and I should have just captured it. But you know, if you play more, your board vision will increase where you see everything a little bit better. And so I'm still rusty and trying to improve. So here we go, h6 to keep his knight out of my position if at some point I move this, but which is protecting that now. But I should have just captured this pawn. And so now he pushes the pawn forward, and so I capture, his knight captures, and then I don't know, I wanted to chase his knight out of there, and this probably wasn't the best move, but I figured here, let's see, he has 6 pawns and I have 6 as well. So yes, this probably wasn't the greatest move. He trades off and I capture, and he brings his rook up, getting ready to come over and try and control this open file. So I moved there to fight for it, but this just helped him trade off pieces. And as my rating is higher than his, if he trades off down to a draw, then that just benefits him and helps him get his rating up, since I'm a higher rated player. But anyway, we trade the rooks. He moves his bishop out so that his rook may move in this direction and not be blocked in by the bishop. So I push forward, trying to take space in the middle, and he places his rook here, trying to control the f-file. And so I move my king, thinking that he may swing in here, and at some point I may want to move my rook to this h-file. So he moves up with his rook, and instead I decide to go here so this knight can't move where I capture this pawn. And he tries to take control of this h-file. And so here I just move my king out, trying to get it into, I don't know, more into the action towards the center of the board. So here he tries to pin this pawn to my king, possibly pushing forward here, but I thought, well, I can just move this pawn up to help cover that one. And so now I decide to just take this open file, but maybe I should have stayed here, because now his knight is going to move up in the future, and he just blocks my rook by moving that pawn up. So I decide to move my king closer to the center, and now this knight becomes a little bit of a problem by jumping down into my position here. And so I attack the knight, he protects it. I move back up here, thinking that the knight cannot go here, or it will be captured. And so from here the knight is down in my position, but it is not doing too much so far. And so he pushes a pawn forward. And so this is a mistake, because now I can capture, and I'm lined up with this bishop on his rook. So now he has to move his rook, which he does, and it gives me time to just capture another pawn. So after he recaptures, now I'm ahead of pawns. So we have 5 pawns to his 4 pawns. And now I decide to move my king off the dark squares, because he has this dark squared bishop. And so he attacks my bishop here, and so I just retreat to keep the bishop pair. And now he moves his rook here to threaten a move here with his knight or his rook, but at the moment this bishop is covering, so I assume he just wants to back up his knight if it jumps into this square. So I attack his knight. He jumps in here, putting me in check. So here I capture, trading off his knight, which is jumping around into my position. And so he recaptures with the rook. And here I move my rook up to h4, attacking this pawn, and thinking maybe I could jump over here and trap his bishop in, or sorry, trap his rook in and trade those off, and then I would just have the extra pawns, and, or sorry, 1 extra pawn, hoping that that would be able to push through. And so he retreats, but now I'm able to capture this unprotected pawn here, which I don't know, he probably should have just protected it with his bishop. But he tries to take this open file, and so I block him. And here, he doesn't want to trade the rook. So I push forward with my pawn, threatening to pin his bishop to his rook. And so he attacks here. And so here I should have just pushed immediately, but instead I protected this pawn with my g-pawn. And so that wasn't the best move, but because now he could potentially just move his rook away, but he didn't notice this little trap here. And so now I push forward, and this must have surprised him. He just moves back now, and so now I just get his rook for free, and so the game's pretty much over after this. He plays, oh, excuse me. So after this, it looks like he just resigned, and so that's how the game ended. A little tactic, and a lot of games, you know, with beginners, until you get up to a certain level, tactics decide a lot of the games if you just miss a tactic. And so that was the 6th episode, the 6th part in this rating run series that I'm doing to just see how high I can get up my rating in rapid games. And in the future, maybe I'll do blitz games because they'll go a lot quicker. And this was a little faster because I just reviewed the game instead of recording as I played, because I had a recording issue when I did that. So if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment or suggestion, and let me know if you prefer me to just review the games more quickly like this, or if you would rather see me just record the games live and then post that, although that takes a little longer. Okay, well, I hope you all enjoyed this. Have a great day, and thank you.